Is it because we have separated it and made it individual salvation without the understanding of a robust understanding of the church and its role, that we've lost this greater witness to the world because we've individualized it to the point of removing it from the collective nature that the church
I
has?
think that's part of it. I think that's part of it. To be sure, it's partly the whole Enlightenment critique, which has eaten into the very fabric of many people's awareness, so that even if they still sometimes want to go to church and sing Christmas carols, say, because that reminds them of when they were kids,
Nostalgia.
it doesn't actually go too deep. It's still there, it's still a resource, but it often doesn't go too deep. But I think you're absolutely right. And this is the danger of certain kinds of Western individualism, that we want to say the gospel is for you, that, you can't think you're a Christian just because your great aunt was a Christian or whatever. It's got to be you personally. I've heard preachers say God has no grandchildren. You need to know God as your father, not just your parents' father or whatever. And there is, of course, great truth in that. Make for yourself, make your own the faith into which you were born or
Yeah.
baptized or whatever it is. However, that individualism then does produce, and I've seen this in some would-be evangelical contexts, the idea of church, which is just a sort of happy accident that this person's a Christian, that person's a Christian, that person's a Christian. So sometimes they all like to be in the same room saying their prayers or singing a hymn together because it's kind of fun, rather than seeing the witness of a community. Because, in the book of Revelation, the great scene is a great multitude that no one can number, of all nations and kingdoms and tribes and tongues. Unless there are moments when we're doing that, we're not actually being our true selves. We are diminished. And different cultures, non-Western cultures, have often got this right. The African slogan, I am because we are, and so on. And that can be overdone. And that can produce passive Christians who just slide along and hope it's all right. But we've got to recapture that sense of corporate identity.
Well, I think that's where Andrew Walls came in, understanding just
Ah,
the understanding of the non-majority or the majority world, speaking to the non-majority world.
yeah,
Because one of the theses that we have is that as the Western church begins to decline, we've seen cultural idolatries that have attached
yeah,
to Christianity, syncretizing it into something altogether else and removing it from the church. What we want is a missionary identity, really,
yeah,
or a
yeah.
missionary ecclesiology as the church. And that's where I think what you're saying is it has to permeate within the political world because the gospel is political in its nature. So in some respect, we're not fighting the unbelieving world right now. I mean, we are, but we're fighting bad theology is
Yes,
what we're
yes,
fighting.
absolutely.
Bad theology
Absolutely.
across the board.
And I mean, it's very telling. I was reading a book recently, a very serious academic book on Christology, on what we say about Jesus, which goes into all the great medieval debates and Reformation debates about how you put the humanity together with the divinity, etc., etc. At a certain point, reading that book, I thought, hang on, where's the kingdom of God in all of this? And I looked in the index, and there was no mention of the kingdom, not as kingdom, but not under Jesus' teaching either. It's as though the only thing that matters is figuring out how Jesus can be both fully divine and fully human. As though if we get that right, then wow, we've won. We're at the top of the tree. Instead of saying the whole point, the way I've said it in lectures is sometimes like this: that the idea of Jesus being divine and human, that is the key in which the music is set, but it isn't the tune that's being played. In other words, I've used the image. Supposing the conductor comes onto stage, looks around at the audience and says, C minor. And the audience think, yeah, we've got Beethoven 5 on our programs. We thought it was in C minor, so you're telling the truth, but we're waiting for you to go da 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 da.
Mhm.
And so it's one thing to say, I, as a theologian, have constructed this lovely picture of how we can say Jesus is divine and human. But unless you're prepared to say the kingdom of God is breaking in, has broken in Jesus, is coming at his return, and we are agents of it right here and now, then the heart of the thing, the main music, is not being heard or played.